Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon. About 80 degrees outside. So I think the last 4 people that stayed enjoyed it. So I want to first thank you all for staying. You've been listening to us talk to you for the last hour and a half. And so I'm going to move along quickly with my comments so that you do have an opportunity to ask all of us some questions. But I'm thrilled to be here this morning as I was preparing and thinking about what to share with you and to hopefully give you some really good practical nuggets on how do you navigate all of the exciting changes as realtors. How do you navigate all of the exciting changes that are taking place here in Grand Rapids and throughout the entire West Michigan community? It really is a very exciting time for Grand Rapids, and I'm going to talk about some of those things that are making it an exciting time for our community. But it's very exciting to know that you all are part of that front face group of folks that are really the first faces that people see when they come into our community. And that's important, and it means a lot, and you can have a tremendous amount of influence as to whether or not people view our community as a place that's welcoming and exciting, or a place that perhaps they may want to not think about living here. So I think you all have a very critical role in helping Grand Rapids to become this place that is perceived to be one of the best places to live in the country right now. I do want to, before I get into some of my comments around cultural intelligence and what it means and why it matters to the real estate market, we've been talking a lot about this whole impact on the international community, and Grand Rapids, again, has become this place that's been a huge attraction to people from all over the world, and that's going to continue. But as I talk about this whole notion around cultural intelligence, I want you to think about it both within the context of international and also domestic. Because when we talk about diversity, that's a very broad term, and there are many things that fall up under that definition, or this whole definition around cultural intelligence. So just like you have people who may come in from Germany or South Africa or Israel, and you've got to be sensitive to the cultural differences. I'm sure many of you have encountered people that are just from the other side of the state who have different experiences and different perspectives and different views, or from one side of town to another. So I want you to be thoughtful about, when we talk about cultural intelligence, don't just think about it in the international context. It's very important. I've been very engaged in the international community, so I understand the importance of being very sensitive to those dynamics. But even thinking about it from a domestic, from a regional, from a local perspective, there's so much diversity that's here. And again, I think you would be served well, and you will serve clients well if you understand that you don't just have to be sensitive to that person that comes here from Germany, but also for that person that moves here from Detroit or that moves here from the South. So when you think about cultural intelligence, I want you to think about it within both of those contexts. So I want to talk a little bit about what is cultural intelligence, but before I do, I want to show you a short video that demonstrates what it is not. Okay? That should wake you up too. No sound? You want to start it from the beginning.
Hi there.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Well, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean. Well, I'm Korean.
Amazing.
I'm Shastina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
No, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Hey, Governor! What's all this then? Top of the morning to you. Let's get a small tea. Double, toil and trouble! Mind the gap! Beware, Jack the Ripper! Bloody hell! Cheerio! I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
Okay, but that is not what cultural intelligence is, okay? And you can see how we can get in a lot of trouble when we make assumptions about people and take those assumptions way too far and can get ourselves in a lot of trouble. So can you imagine having that kind of conversation with a potential home buyer? So where are you from? Where would you like to live? So you want to be very careful. But in a nutshell, when we talk about cultural intelligence, a simple definition is that it is the capability to function effectively in multicultural situations. Okay? And so capability, it's a key word because it's a skill. It's not enough to say, I don't mind people from other cultures. I don't mind being around people who are different from me. That's a good start. But the key is that it's a skill. It is a capability. And as realtors, you want to be able to have that capability where you are able to be effective in any multicultural situation, which is part of why I love the conversation around cultural intelligence, because it doesn't actually even initially come out of the diversity conversation, but it comes out of the intelligence research. So just like you have IQ, your intellectual intelligence, just like you have your EQ, you've heard of emotional intelligence, you have your cultural intelligence. So it is a form of intelligence, and that's where the research starts. And so what you want to be able to do as a culturally intelligent person, again, you want to have a certain set of skills that will allow you to navigate in any multicultural context. And in any multicultural context, it's important to say that because when we talk about what's happening in Grand Rapids, for example, Grand Rapids is changing, and it's an exciting time, as I mentioned, for Grand Rapids. You know, again, we have a huge group of people from the international community that are moving into the area. But even just, again, when we think about it from a domestic and a regional perspective, over 35% of the people that live in our community are people of color. And that's not just international, but again, those are people that were born and raised in Grand Rapids or throughout West Michigan or somewhere in the United States. 9% of the folks that are here are foreign born. So you have some clear, rich diversity there. But also Grand Rapids is changing in the sense that we are getting quite a bit of national recognition, as I'm sure most of you know, and you probably use it as you're marketing our community to people from around the world. But just some of the most recent highlights that our city has received, just were nominated just in this month as one of the best cities for raising a family by Forbes magazine. That's pretty huge. Now the question is, when we talk about cultural intelligence, is what family? Okay? We want to make sure that Grand Rapids is known to be a best city for raising all families, okay? Not just a certain family, not just a family that is from West Michigan, but a family that moves here from Germany, a family that moves here from South Africa, a family that moves here from Detroit, a family that moves here from North Carolina. And so we want to make sure that we are that kind of community. But that's a great honor to be recognized as a city for raising a family. Recently by Lonely Planet, #1 travel destination for 2014, one of America's top most exciting mid-sized cities, and then 14 destinations for your travel bucket list by the Huffington Post. So we are growing, getting a lot of national attention, and Grand Rapids is really becoming to be a place that is on the map as a place where you want to be. So again, very exciting, but are we prepared to receive and welcome people that come into our community? And do we have the level of cultural intelligence to help them navigate and be successful here? I have seen so many examples, unfortunately, of people who have come to Grand Rapids and have chosen not to stay here because they have not felt that it was a welcoming community. And those are people from around the world as well as people from other parts of the state. I'm part of a global board of an organization that's headquartered here in Grand Rapids, but we have a presence in 35 countries around the world. And one of our top executives, we were able to recruit him from the United Kingdom, and he and his wife moved here. And unfortunately, they did not stay long. They did end up staying with the company, but they chose to move back to the UK, and their main reason for wanting to go back was because they did not feel like they fit into the West Michigan culture here. It was mentioned earlier that I have done some research as I was working on my doctorate degree. I was doing some research, and I was very interested in looking at it on a global level, and specifically looking at South Africa and sort of trying to get some sense of expatriates who do work in South Africa, what made the difference between those expatriates who were successful versus those who were not successful. And can you guess what the number one reason was why those expats who were not successful, why they failed? Guess what the number one reason was? Inability to adapt to the culture. Most people would assume that it's because they maybe lack the technical skills or the business acumen. These are high-level executives. And Ford Motor Company, for example, has a huge presence in South Africa, and so I had the opportunity to interview about 13 of their top-level expats from all over the world, and to get to hear what were some of the patterns and themes of what made the folks successful, and again, those who were not successful. And the number one reason that those who were not successful, the number one reason was that their inability to adapt to the culture. Can you guess what the number two reason is? So that could be in South Africa, but it could be right here in West Michigan. Can you guess what the second reason is? Inability of the spouse to adapt. Okay? So again, we would assume that the second reason might be, okay, maybe they just weren't up for the job. They didn't have the skills to be the VP of marketing or the VP of global sales. But it's the inability of the spouse to adapt. And it's interesting and exciting to hear about all of the work that the Right Place is doing. And when we talk about these international companies that have a presence here, and also the companies that are here that have a presence internationally, like an Amway, who now 70% of their business is in China. 70%. But it's interesting when you hear that, unfortunately, and not to suggest that this represents the companies that were highlighted, but unfortunately, companies do not do that good of a job of helping people to get acclimated when they move to a new community. The two things that they spend time on is housing and schools. And those are very important, and obviously you play a very critical role in that. But then they neglect helping them to really get acclimated and really be able to become integrated into the community. And so even as you think about your role as real estate agents, recognize that as you are helping a person find a home, they really need more than that. And if you can play a bigger role in terms of not just helping them find a home in a community where they feel comfortable with the schools, but any way that you can assist them in really feeling like they can become a part of the community, that goes a long way. It goes a very long way. When we talk about Grand Rapids, I mean, we, again, because we're getting all of this attention, we've put a lot of energy into marketing ourselves. And so we even have our own diversity statement. We say that the future of our region depends on our ability to embrace change and leverage diversity through leadership, education, employment, suppliers, and continued community support. We believe that diversity is critical to our business strategy and will improve our competitiveness and prospects for long-term success. And so we as a community are marketing this to the larger world. And again, you all are on the front lines, and so you play a big role in making sure that this statement is true and that it really works that way here. When we talk about this whole notion around cultural intelligence, and we think about it, within the context of the Grand Rapids community, it's unfortunate, as much as we are a welcoming community and we do recognize and celebrate the diversity that is here, there are still incidents of discrimination that take place here. Are you surprised by that? When you look at, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Fair Housing group, and they do extensive research on discrimination in Grand Rapids, and it is still, unfortunately, alive. And I don't want to say well, because that's not a good thing, but it is alive. Just in this last year, in 2013, they had several cases, I think over 100 cases. Many of those cases where real discrimination was found, the three top areas where people were discriminated against based on family status, based on race, and based on disability. And so I think it's important for us to even understand that that still happens here. And as agents, we have, I think, you have a responsibility and an opportunity to negate some of these challenges that are still being faced by our community. But, when we talk about that, when we talk about discrimination, again, many of you, not in any way am I suggesting that any of you are part of that. And the reality is, even when we talk about discrimination and it being a big issue in our community, where most of us tend to fall is on this other side, and bias actually should be over on the far side here. But where most of us tend to fall is not that we blatantly discriminate against other people, but it's what we call that unintentional bias that we have towards people. And when we say unintentional, what we're really talking about is, we're not even conscious of it, but it's those stereotypes. Nunana talked a lot about being careful not to make assumptions. But it's those assumptions and those stereotypes that we make about other people, and we do it unconsciously. And part of that comes from our expectations of how people are supposed to behave. We think that people should act and think the way we act and think, because that's the right way, right? That's the West Michigan way, or that's the American way, or that's the Western way. And that can oftentimes get us in a lot of trouble, and sometimes be not just as dangerous as blatant discrimination, but even worse, because you can't even fix it if you don't even know that it's there. But that's where most of us fall, is on that side of that unintentional bias and that what we call unconscious bias. And again, it's our attitudes and thoughts about other people and our stereotypes that we have of other people, whether that's, all black people are good at sports, or all black people can dance, or all, I think someone was saying, all male men eat donuts. Whatever those stereotypes that we have, we take those into our interactions with people from other cultures. And they can sometimes be very detrimental to those relationships, and especially when you talk about it within the context of working with someone that is looking for a home. So when we talk about cultural intelligence, again, one of the greatest benefits that it offers us is it allows us to, again, it's a skill that we have, and it allows us to be able to navigate in multicultural situations. And the definition, again, earlier, allows us to function effectively in those multicultural situations, regardless of what that context is. And I find that to be very encouraging, because when we talk about diversity, it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is a very broad term. And the reality is none of us can know everything there is to know about every culture. We talk about the fact that 35% of the folks here in our community are people of color, 9% are foreign-born. We've got 135 companies, international companies doing business here. I mean, the list of diversity that's within even just those descriptions can be huge. And so sometimes it can be overwhelming and intimidating to think, boy, do I have to know everything there is to know about the German culture? Do I have to know everything there is to know about the African-American culture? Do I have to know everything there is to know about women? And what cultural intelligence suggests is that no, you don't. It's simply a mindset. It's a way of thinking about and thinking ahead of time about your interaction with people who are different from you, and making sure that you process things in a way where you protect yourself from making those unintentional biases or those stereotypes. And so when we talk about cultural intelligence, there are really 4 capabilities that you can develop. And we actually have, the Cultural Intelligence Center, we actually have an assessment that we use that allows an individual to learn what their level of cultural intelligence is. It is the only academically evidence-based tool in the world, and it's actually been given to about 40,000 people now around the world. But again, the only tool in the world. And so it's a tool that we use that helps people, again, get some sense of where you are in terms of your level of cultural intelligence. And it's a development tool. It's not a tool to sort of make you feel bad if your intelligence is a little lower than the other person. But it's just a way to say, this is sort of where I'm at, and here are some opportunities for me to grow. So when we talk about, again, cultural intelligence, we have 4 capabilities that we encourage people to develop in. The first being what we call, and I know this print is a little small, so forgive me, but I'll read it to you. But that first capability is what we call CQ Drive. And that's all about your level of motivation and interest in getting to know people who are different from you. It's a starting point. It's important to have drive, but you can't stop there. So again, you can't stop by saying, I have no problem with people who are different from me. I enjoy being around people who are different from me. That's a good start, and that's all about drive, but you have to go to the next level and really begin to delve into understanding what some of those differences you might have with people who are different from you. So CQ drive is the first. Level of motivation, your level of interest in interacting with people who are different from you. The second capability is what we call CQ knowledge, and that's all about learning about what your understanding is about culture and how culture impacts behavior and what might be some of the similarities and differences of different cultures. And as you develop your knowledge about different cultures, that then gives you more ability to function effectively in environments where people where it's a multicultural situation or there are people who are different from you. The third one is what we call CQ strategy, and that's all about your ability to plan for those interactions. So if you know that you're going to be meeting, for example, with a family that just moved here from Israel, okay? And so you say, okay, well, I want to make sure that I am culturally intelligent in this situation. So obviously you're excited. Your CQ drive is how you're motivated. You're very interested in meeting this family. You genuinely want to help them, and you want to make sure that they get into a house that they're satisfied with. So that's part of your CQ drive. CQ knowledge then says, okay, what are some things that I may need to try to learn about this particular culture that's going to make sure, that's going to ensure that my interaction with this family is going to be a positive one, and that I'm going to be sensitive to the different needs that they may have compared to another family. Then you go into CQ strategy, and that says then, so how then do I actually plan for that interaction? So you have to be thoughtful about what might I do differently given this situation, given the fact that this is a family that is from this part of the world. CQ action then is all about that behavior, and that is your ability to adapt when relating or working interculturally. So again, you've got this family that's here from Israel. So what do I need to know about this particular family that may be helpful in my interaction with them? How then, based on what I know, how then do I interact? So as you gave the example earlier about the, if it's a family from China and, one of the folks are business folks, you've got exchange cards, then part of developing your CQ knowledge, you understand, okay, when I give my business card to them, I need to give it to them in a certain way. That's part of that CQ knowledge. But then strategy, again, gets a little deeper and says, okay, what are some of the things I need to really be thinking about as I'm working with this family? And in terms of making sure that I understand what their needs are, and that I'm going to make sure I find a home and a community that they're going to be happy in and that they're going to thrive in. And then again, CQ action then is, what are some of the behaviors that I may need to exhibit that would be very appropriate and helpful for this interaction, and what behaviors might I need to stay away from? And so again, when you have an overall level of cultural intelligence and you understand these capabilities, you can adapt this model to any multicultural context. So whether, again, it's that family from Israel or that family from South Africa or that family or that single person that just moved here from Detroit or that person that just moved from the north side of town to the east side of town, you can use this model and say, okay, given this context, it's a multicultural, it's someone from another culture, someone that's different from me. You walk through that process and say, what do I need to know? What might be helpful for me in this situation? How then might I strategize as I prepare to interact with this person? And what type of behaviors may I need to change and adjust? And you can carry this model. And that frees you up from feeling like you've got to know every single thing there is to know about every culture, because that is absolutely impossible. So I want to challenge you to develop your overall cultural intelligence. I did bring a couple of resources here, and I know we're real short on time here. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about cultural intelligence, there are a couple of books that I would encourage you to purchase. The first is by my colleague with the Cultural Intelligence Center. It's called Leading with Cultural Intelligence, The New Secret to Success. And it's a very good practical read that, again, it delves into this model a little bit more, helps you understand what we really mean by it, and it unpacks the 4 capabilities even more. So just a great read. You can buy it pretty inexpensively at Amazon.com. And then another really good resource when we talk about developing your CQ knowledge, and again, that's learning more about different cultures. And that's a sensitive area sometimes because you have to be careful about, we talk about not making stereotypes, but at the same time when we talk about some of the research that's been done, there is a place to make what we call sophisticated stereotypes. there are some general assumptions that we can make based on the research. So, for example, when we think about the United States, when we talk about the things that sort of influence the way we think and the way we behave, would it be fair to say that we, generally speaking, are a pretty individualistic society? Would that be a fair assumption? Okay. Now, does that mean that every single American is individualistic? No. But generally speaking, we can say that for the most part, we are pretty individualistic as a society. So someone from another culture that's trying to learn a little bit more about the United States, when we talk about that CQ knowledge, they can make a sophisticated stereotype and say, okay, generally speaking, okay, I'm going to interact with this person who's from America. I know that for the most part, they tend to be more individualistic. Now, when we talk about strategy, once you get into dialogue with that person, you may discover, because you're listening, you're learning, you may discover that that particular person is not individualistic at all, that they're much more, collectivistic. And you learn that as you're, again, building a relationship and you're getting to know that person. But you can at least have a starting point to say, generally speaking, I know based on the research that there are some things about different cultures that for the most part transcend throughout that culture. This is a great book. It's called Expand Your Borders, but it's a great book that deals just with that. And when we talk about CQ knowledge, so it actually breaks it down, looking across the globe and breaking it down into different what we call global clusters. And it just gives you some insights around knowledge in terms of how different cultures tend to think. So when you talk about, when you're interacting with someone that's moving here from Latin Europe, or if you're interacting with someone that's moving here from the Middle East, it gives you some basic sophisticated stereotypes that you can use to at least guide you into at least thinking about what are some of the things you need to be aware of as you are preparing to interact with that person. So another great resource here. But again, just want to end with the fact that developing your cultural intelligence, especially as real estate agents, is extremely important. You are interacting with people from different cultures on a daily basis, whether, again, they're from outside of the U.S. or from another part of our state. And having that cultural intelligence will go a very long way in terms of your ability to connect with people and make sure that at the end of the day, when you've helped them find that home, that you really have been sensitive to what their needs are and very much respected and appreciated the differences in terms of the culture. Questions?
I just want to give you another resource. Bestseller book.
Yes, that is a classic. Yeah, it is. Did you hear it? It's called Kiss, Bow, and Handshake. It's a classic. And that really gets into the whole CQ knowledge box. So again, when you talk about learning more about other cultures, that is a very good resource there. Yes. Yes, both are by my colleague, Dr. David Livermore with the Cultural Intelligence Center. So it's Dr. David Livermore, Livermore. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe just a follow-up comment on the question about people that don't have visas, don't have proper work authorization. Even by last count, there's 11, 12 million undocumented foreign nationals in the United States. 80+% of those are regularly working and employed. Now, by law, you're not violating any laws. Well, it depends on the state. There are actually some states, not Michigan, where there's harboring illegal aliens and there's more strict enforcement. But here in Michigan and West Michigan, you don't have to be an immigration enforcement agent and get into somebody's legal status or lack thereof. So if it's a valid purchaser, you're fine. That's a whole other topic for immigration reform. But they certainly are the vast majority of the undocumented are contributing members to the society. So no path to legalization at present.
Most of our work, which is exciting but kind of sad world, the larger world is going to embrace this more. But it's happening more and more in the United States. We provide training and consulting and assessment. We facilitate the class. The whole goal is to organize individuals. We're sort of a virtual organization with a part of it.
Yeah, Tim. Yep. Actually, thank you for asking about our funding. We're a nonprofit. We are completely private. We do that for a reason. The conversations we have with business prospects as they come in from Germany or Japan or wherever they happen to be, because we are private, they are not subject to FOIA. They're not subject to public meetings and things like that. So we are structured as a private nonprofit. We're funded by about, the number keeps going up, which is a good thing. Last I checked, about 230, 240 different businesses around the area. GRAR is an investor in the right place, so thank you again for your investment. I like my paycheck. But yeah, it's about 230, 240 different businesses and municipalities. So, cities like the city of Kentwood will invest in the right place, knowing that we take the West Michigan's mission and our marketing around the world, which is something that Kentwood wouldn't be able to do, but Kentwood's in part of that story of West Michigan. So that's where our funding comes from. Thank you. What we recommend is the West Michigan way. It's all about relationships. Strike up a relationship with John. Strike up a relationship with other, what we would consider to be pre-stage pre-stage companies. So I'll use the example of InGlass that we had. InGlass was an Italian-based company. They're in 5 other continents. They have yet to be in North America, and believe it or not, they decided on Byron Center to establish their North American headquarters. So they're going to be building a $17.5 million building in Byron Center and bringing on about 109 employees the first 2 years. So, but when they were in our offices, that's one of the services that we host is we open up one of our conference rooms and they will do all-day interviews. And I think John's been part of them, where these companies, whether it be corporate insurance, relocation specialists. I think we've had GRAR in at certain points. The board of GRAR just at least presenting options for this company. We don't like to pick. We don't want to say, oh well, we're going to have Coldwell in, but Keller's not invited, or things like that. We don't get into that. So instead, we will bring an association in to represent that group. But also, the closer relationships that you can have. To be honest, this company InGlass, they're going to be bringing 109 people over. I think 4 or 5 are from Italy. The rest are all going to be hired here, and so they're going to be leaning tremendously on a local realtor. But it's going to be those relationships. So read the paper, know these announcements, get on the horn, start looking up these companies, reach out to them. A lot of them, if they've taken the time to establish in the U.S., they have a strong U.S. or a strong English, English-speaking division. So you don't have to worry about language barriers. But that would be my recommendation.
Maybe I'll just comment too. I think there's a lot of opportunity too, and even if you're not a member of that particular faith, I've found that many organizations, many different faiths are open to advisors, professionals, when they see that openness and the willingness to have a dialogue, whether it's a temple or a mosque. I mean, they want to find the right resources for their parishioners, for their membership as well. So as realtors, that's an opportunity maybe to reach out as well and make those connections.
With that being said, events that we may have, one thing our Global Real Estate Council of Michigan is looking to implement is offering the introduction to the Certified International Property Specialist class. You talk about how you get involved with international real estate. That's an excellent start in terms of providing some of that education and the networking and the resources that are available. Other things that we may be doing, certainly our international committee is looking to possibly do some other events, so maybe some lunch and learns and some other activities in the coming months. So like Michael said, there is a sign-up sheet if you are interested in participating in any of those things. Please stay tuned for further notice. So we are working on that. Finally, I think on behalf of our international committee and all of us here, we're very grateful to all of our speakers. I think you gave us an overwhelming source of information, and indeed there is international real estate opportunities going on here in West Michigan. You've certainly given us some insight as to how more effectively to deal with that community, to make them feel welcome to our community. We want them to come. We want them to invest. We want them to add that diversity to our community and enhancement. So thank you very much to all of you. In appreciation of that, we do have a small token for your participation with us today.